There is a map that every civilization in the known galaxy uses. It is called the Varath Standard Chart, named for the civilization that first compiled it 300 years ago, updated quarterly, distributed to every registered member of the Galactic Cartographic Union. It is the most comprehensive navigational document in existence, 412,000 star systems, every known transit corridor, every registered colony, station, installation, and waypoint, every hazard, every anomaly, every point of interest that any member civilization has ever reported. It is the map of the known galaxy. And 7 years ago, at the 341st quarterly update, something was removed from it. Not an error, not an oversight, not a system reclassified or a route recalculated. A decision. The Galactic Cartographic Union, under pressure from the Syndicate of Nine, which had not forgotten the Marsh Accord and had decided on a different kind of response, voted to remove all human-designated systems from the Varath Standard Chart. 42 human colonies, 11 transit corridors, 617 waypoints, 3 research stations, 2 deep space observatories. It's gone from the map. Not from existence, just from the map. The message was clear. If you are not on the map, you do not exist in the navigational consciousness of the galaxy. Trade routes avoid you, ships do not call at your ports. Your systems become, to the rest of the galaxy, empty space. You become invisible. The Syndicate had spent 6 years building toward the Marsh Accord and had gotten a governance framework instead of dominance. They had been looking for a different lever ever since. This was the lever. Remove humanity from the map. Humanity's response arrived 14 months later. Not a protest, not a legal challenge, not a diplomatic objection filed through the Marsh Accord's newly established governance framework. Humanity released a map. Their own map. And the galaxy, looking at what humanity had charted in 14 months of work they hadn't known was happening, went very quiet for the second time in 7 years. Because the Varath Standard Chart had 412,000 star systems, humanity's map had 1.4 million. The removal. The vote at the Galactic Cartographic Union had not been close. 31 to 7. 7 civilizations had voted against the removal, citing navigational safety concerns, treaty obligations, and the straightforward observation that removing a civilization from a navigational chart was not a cartographic decision. The 31 had prevailed. The Syndicate had spent 6 months quietly building the coalition. It had been careful work, not threats. The Marsh Accord made overt coercion complicated. Instead, trade incentives, preferential route designations, quiet conversations about the direction of regional commerce. The message had been simple. A vote to remove human systems from the Varath chart was a vote for a stronger relationship with the Syndicate. 31 civilizations had decided a stronger relationship with the Syndicate was worth it. The decision was announced at the quarterly update meeting, formally, with the procedural language of a cartographic body making a navigational decision. The human representative to the Cartographic Union was a woman named Analyst Yeva Akoy. She was not an ambassador. She was, as her title suggested, an analyst. She attended cartographic meetings because someone from the Human Navigation Authority had to attend cartographic meetings. She heard the announcement. She noted it in her meeting log. She transmitted the note to her supervisors. She did not object at the meeting. She did not issue a statement. She did not request a point of order or a procedural review. She wrote her log entry, finished the meeting, and went back to her office. The log entry was 4 sentences. Verath Standard Chart Update 341. All human-designated systems removed by Cartographic Union vote. Vote result 317. Decision takes effect at next distribution cycle, approximately 6 weeks. Note, this will affect approximately 14% of registered human commercial transit corridors. She attached the note to a report. The report went to the Navigation Authority. The Navigation Authority sent it to the Strategic Planning Office. The Strategic Planning Office read it and made one note in the margin. The note said accelerate Phase 2 of the Horizon Project. Target completion 14 months. Then they filed the report. And 14 months later, humanity released a map. 14 months. The Horizon Project had begun 22 years earlier. Not as a response to the cartographic removal, as a response to something much older. When humanity had first encountered the Verath Standard Chart 3 decades ago, they had done what any analytical civilization does with a new data set. They had studied it. They had cross-referenced it against their own observations. They had looked for gaps, errors, inconsistencies. They had found many. The Verath chart was 300 years old in its original form. It had been updated quarterly, but the update process relied on member civilizations reporting their own surveys. A system that no member civilization had surveyed was a system that did not appear on the chart. This meant the chart had a specific kind of blind spot. It was accurate within its scope. Every system on it had been surveyed by someone. Every route on it had been traveled by someone. But the scope was defined by what member civilizations had chosen to survey. And member civilizations, motivated by commerce and strategic interest, surveyed the systems that mattered to them. They did not survey the space between things that mattered. The voids, the unexplored corridors, the regions between transit routes that nobody had gone to because nobody had a reason to go. In 300 years of quarterly updates, the Verath chart had mapped approximately 30% of the known galaxy. 70% remained uncharted. Not uninhabited, the galaxy was old and civilizations existed in unexpected places. Just uncharted, unknown to the Cartographic Union, not on the map. 22 years ago, humanity had decided to chart the rest. Not publicly, not with announcements and press releases and requests for Cartographic Union observers. Quietly, systematically, with the particular patience of a civilization that had learned, over decades, that the things you did quietly were the things that produced the most significant results. They had sent survey ships into the uncharted regions, small ships, designed not to be noticed, equipped with sensor arrays that could map a system in hours and be gone before anyone thought to ask what they were doing there. For 22 years, those ships had been going out and coming back. The data they brought had been accumulating in a database that very few people knew existed. The Horizon Project Database. When the Cartographic Union removed humanity from the Verath Standard Chart, the Strategic Planning Office had looked at the Horizon Project Database and made a calculation. The calculation was, we have enough. Not everything. The galaxy was large and 22 years of quiet survey work had not reached everything, but enough for what came next. In 14 months, a team of 600 cartographers, navigators, data scientists, and survey specialists compiled, verified, formatted, and prepared the Horizon Project database for release. In 14 months, they built a map. So the Horizon chart was released without announcement. Not to the Cartographic Union, not through official channels, not with press materials or diplomatic notifications or any of the procedural apparatus of a formal release. It was simply made available. Every navigation system in the known galaxy received an update notification. Standard format. The kind of notification that appeared when chart data was updated or corrected. Most navigation systems were configured to accept such updates automatically. Most navigation systems accepted it automatically. The horizon chart loaded alongside the Verath standard chart in every navigation database that accepted the update. Which was most of them? The navigators and cartographers and pilots who first noticed it described the experience in various ways. Some said it was like turning on a light in a dark room. Some said it was like looking at a map of a city you thought you knew, and discovering that 60% of the streets had been missing from every map you'd ever used. Well, some just stared. Because the horizon chart did not look like the Verath standard chart. The Verath chart was comprehensive within its scope, dense with data in the regions that had been surveyed, detailed annotations, transit corridors marked with usage statistics, systems color-coded by classification and resource profile. The horizon chart was all of that. And then it was more. 1.4 million systems, against the Verath chart's 412,000. 3 times as many transit corridors, routes through regions that no Verath chart had ever marked as navigable because no Verath chart had ever surveyed them. 47 civilizations that were not members of the Cartographic Union and had never appeared on any standard chart. Not extinct civilizations, living ones, in systems that the Verath chart had marked as empty. New resources, new hazards, new waypoints in regions that had been dark on every map for 300 years. And all of it, every system, every route, every annotation sourced. Reference to specific survey missions, specific dates, specific instruments. 22 years of documented, verifiable work. It was not a statement. It was not a retaliation. It was a map. The most comprehensive map of the galaxy that had ever existed. And it had been made by the civilization, the Galactic Cartogra. FIC Union had just removed from the map. The reaction. The Galactic Cartographic Union held an emergency session 17 days after the Horizon chart was released. Emergency sessions were rare. The Union was a cartographic body. Its meetings were scheduled quarterly. Emergencies were navigational, a major hazard discovered, a significant route closed, a system reclassified due to stellar activity. This was not a navigational emergency. It was a professional one. The director of the Union, a Verath senior named Archivist Sorvanketh, had been in the position for 28 years. He had overseen 63 updates of the standard chart. He had managed the political considerations that came with any body that 38 civilizations depended on for navigational data. He had never managed anything like this. He opened the session by displaying both charts side by side on the main screen. He did not need to say anything. The comparison was sufficient. The horizon chart has been verified, said the senior cartographic analyst, who had spent the past 17 days doing nothing else. We've cross-referenced the survey data against independent observations from 12 member civilizations. The data is accurate. All of it, someone asked. Everything we've been able to verify. The 47 uncontacted civilizations, we've confirmed the existence of 6 so far. The new transit corridors, we've sent verification probes to 11. All 11 check out. She paused. The methodology is sound. The survey work appears to have been conducted over approximately 22 years using conventional survey vessels operating in uncharted regions. 22 years, Archivist Sorvanketh said. Approximately. They've been surveying uncharted space for 22 years. Oh yes. He looked at the screen, at the Verath standard chart on the left, at the horizon chart on the right. While we weren't looking, he said, apparently, silence in the chamber. The 47 uncontacted civilizations, said a representative from one of the member states. If they've been living in uncharted space, if they've been there all along, why didn't any of our surveys find them? Because we didn't survey that space, the analyst said, we surveyed the regions relevant to our commercial routes, the regions between our routes, she gestured at the horizon chart. We left to someone else. And humanity surveyed it. Humanity surveyed it. Another silence. What do they want? Someone asked. It was the question everyone had been waiting for. The horizon chart had been released without conditions, without demands, without a cover letter or an accompanying statement or any indication of what humanity expected to happen next. Just the map. We don't know, Sorvanketh said. They haven't said. They released a map of 70% of the galaxy without saying what they want for it. Without saying anything, he said. The room processed that. Outside the emergency session, the horizon chart was having effects that had nothing to do with cartographic politics. Commercial navigators had found 17 new transit corridors in the first week, routes through previously uncharted space that cut transit times between major systems by as much as 40%. Routes that had been invisible because nobody had mapped the space they passed through. Several shipping consortiums had already filed route registration requests based on horizon chart data. 3 resource extraction companies had identified new deposits in systems that the Verath chart had marked as surveyed and empty. They had not been empty. They had simply not been surveyed by anyone who reported to the Cartographic Union. 2 of the 47 uncontacted civilizations had been reached by diplomatic probes. Initial contact had been cautious, as first contacts always were, but the civilizations existed. They had been living in uncharted space for generations, unknown to everyone who had been relying on the Verath standard chart. Unknown to everyone except humanity. The Syndicate of 9 held its own emergency session. It lasted 11 hours. The specific question was, how had humanity surveyed 70% of the galaxy in 22 years without anyone noticing? The answer, when the intelligence analysis was completed, was uncomfortable. The survey ships had not been hidden. They had operated openly in uncharted space. Anyone who had been watching uncharted space would have seen them. Nobody had been watching uncharted space. Because uncharted space, by definition, was space that nobody had a reason to watch. Humanity had surveyed 3 times as much of the galaxy as the Cartographic Union's 300-year effort by the simple method of going to the places nobody else had gone to. Not because they had more resources, not because they had better technology, because they had decided to go. 22 years ago, before the Syndicate existed, before the RSH Accord, before the cartographic removal, before any of it, someone in human strategic planning had looked at the Verath standard chart and seen not what was on it but what wasn't, and decided to go find out. Archivist SORVANKITH. Archivist Sorvanketh requested a meeting with the Human Navigation Authority 12 days after the emergency session. The meeting was granted. He traveled to it personally. He could have conducted it by transmission. He chose to go in person because he was, under everything else, a cartographer, and cartographers, in his experience, understood things better when they were actually present. The human representative was a woman named Director Ami Sato. She ran the Navigation Authority. She had overseen the Horizon project for the last 8 of its 22 years. She met him in an office that had one significant feature. An entire wall was a display. On the display was the Horizon chart. He stood in front of it for a long time before saying anything. 1.4 million systems, color-coded by survey date, the older surveys in one color, the more recent in another. The pattern of the work was visible in the colors starting at the edges of known space, moving outward, methodically covering the voids. 22 years of work, visible in the pattern. "Oh, you started before the syndicate existed," he said. "Oh yes," Director Sato said. "Before the Marsh Accord." "Oh yes." "Before any of the political complications that led to the removal." "Oh yes." He turned to look at her. Then why, if it wasn't a response to anything, why? She looked at the map. Because it was there," she said. He waited. The Verath chart had been the galactic map for 300 years, she said. It mapped 30% of the galaxy. Everyone used it. Everyone depended on it. Nobody questioned it. She paused. "We questioned it." "What was the question?" "What's in the other 70%? She looked at the display. It seemed like an important question. We were new to the galactic community. We were reading every document we could find, every historical record, every survey report, every cartographic archive. She paused. And the thing that kept appearing was, "This is what we know," and what kept not appearing was, "This is what we don't know," as if the boundary of the map was the boundary of the galaxy. "It isn't," he said. "No," she agreed, "it isn't." He looked at the 47 civilizations marked in the chart. Small notations, careful ones. The civilizations in the uncharted regions, you've known about them. "Some of them for years," she said. "We've been making quiet contact through diplomatic channels. Not formal contact. We didn't want to complicate things before we understood what we had." She paused. "The cartographic union removing us from the Verath chart accelerated our timeline." "We handed you the moment," he said. "You gave us a reason to release it now rather than later," she said. "The map was going to be released eventually. The removal moved the schedule." He sat down in one of the chairs facing the display. He had been a cartographer for 40 years. He had spent those 40 years maintaining and updating a document that he had believed, with professional pride, was the most accurate representation of the galaxy in existence. He was looking at evidence that it was not. "What do you want?" he asked, the same question the emergency session had asked. "For the chart, for the data, what do you want?" Director Sato looked at him steadily. "Nothing," she said. He stared at her. "The Horizon chart is freely available," she said. "No licensing fees, no access restrictions, no conditions of use. Any navigation system that wants to integrate it can integrate it." She paused. "We released it that way intentionally." "Why?" "Because the goal was never to own the map," she said. "The goal was to make a better map, one that showed what was actually there." She looked at the display. 47 civilizations have been living in uncharted space. The Verath chart didn't know they existed. The routes that cut 40% off transit times, nobody was using them because nobody knew they were there." She paused. "The galaxy is larger than the map said it was. We thought people should know that." He sat with that. "And humanity's systems," he said, "the ones removed from the Verath chart, are on the Horizon chart," she said, "along with everything else." "So you're on the map," he said. "We're on a map," she said, "a better one." "The better map." The Galactic Cartographic Union voted 6 weeks after the emergency session. The vote was on 2 questions. The first question, restore human systems to the Verath Standard Chart. The vote was 41-0. The 7 who had voted against the original removal voted yes immediately. The 31 who had voted for it voted yes within a week, as it became clear that the syndicate's leverage over the process had evaporated. It had evaporated because the Horizon chart had made the Verath chart optional. Not useless, but optional. If you wanted to navigate using only the Verath chart, you could. But you would be navigating with a map that covered 30% of the galaxy, was missing 47 known civilizations, and didn't show 17 transit corridors that shortened major routes by up to 40%. Navigators stopped using the Verath chart as the primary reference within 3 months of the Horizon chart's release. Not because anyone told them to, because the Horizon chart was better. A map that nobody had a reason to use was not a political tool. It was just a document. The syndicate's lever had broken the moment the Horizon chart loaded on every navigation system in the galaxy. The second vote question: integrate the Horizon chart into the Verath standard chart as a supplementary dataset, with Human Navigation Authority representatives joining the Cartographic Union's Survey Committee. This vote was also 41-0. The archivist had proposed it himself. Director Ami Sato attended the first survey committee meeting as a full member. She brought something to the meeting, a status report on the Horizon project. Not the completed map, the ongoing work. Because the Horizon project had not stopped, 22 years of survey work had mapped what they had mapped, there was more to do. She laid out the current survey priorities, the regions beyond the Horizon chart's current boundaries, the systems that initial surveys had flagged for more detailed mapping, the 47 uncontacted civilizations, several of which had expressed interest in Cartographic Union membership. She laid out the plan for the next 20 years. The committee listened. The archivist sitting at the head of the table looked at the plan and then at her. 20 more years, he said. At minimum, she said. What do you expect to find? She looked at the plan, at the regions beyond the current boundary, at the space beyond the space they had already mapped. The galaxy is larger than any map has ever shown, she said. We've mapped 30% more than anyone else has. We think there's at least another 30% beyond that. She paused. Possibly more. Possibly more, he said. The galaxy is old, she said. Things have had a long time to develop in the places nobody has been looking. He thought about the 47 civilizations, about the transit corridors, about the 300 years that the Verath chart had been the map of the known galaxy and had been, without anyone realizing, the map of less than a third of it. When the syndicate removed you from the Verath chart, he said, what was the actual meeting like, when you decided to release the Horizon chart? She thought about it. Quiet, she said. We'd been building toward it for 22 years. The decision to release it was quick. The removal gave us the timing. The work was already done. Were you angry? She considered the question carefully. We were clear, she said. The removal was meant to make us invisible, to remove us from the navigational consciousness of the galaxy. She looked at the survey committee around the table. We thought the best response to being removed from a map was to make a better one. The archivist nodded slowly. They removed you from the map, he said. Oh yes, she said. And you built your own. Oh yes. One that made theirs obsolete. She looked at the Horizon chart displayed on the committee room wall. 1.4 million systems, 22 years of work. The galaxy as it actually was rather than as it had been mapped. One that showed what was actually there, she said. That's all we were trying to do. Well, he looked at the chart. He thought about 30% versus 100%, about 300 years versus 22, about the particular quality of a civilization that responded to being erased by illuminating everything that had been in the dark. What do you call it? He asked. The project, the charts. The horizon chart, she said. Why horizons? She looked at the map. Because the horizon is the limit of what you can see from where you're standing, she said, not the limit of what exists. She paused. We thought that was the right name for a map that was trying to show people what was beyond the edge of what they'd been looking at. He sat with that for a long time. Then he turned back to the committee. Let's begin, he said. And the survey committee of the Galactic Cartographic Union, with human representatives present for the first time, began planning the mapping of the rest of the galaxy. The galaxy that had always been there, waiting for someone to go look.